Tom Campbell here. I and MBT Events hope you like this video. It was made possible by donations from our supporters. If you're one of them, thank you so very, very much. If you're new to MBT and find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. It would be very much appreciated. The links are in the description below. Thank you.
Would I have a job in NPMR similar to one I had in PMR? What are my options? Now, this brings up an interesting point you talk about a lot, and that is the jobs in non-physical matter reality. Now, as I understand it, you describe those jobs as not actual processes, but learning situations.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. The language is difficult. We tend to use words. We have to use the words that everybody knows in order to try to explain the things that we're experiencing. So I often said, I got a job in the transition reality, okay? And what I mean is that I was put in the transition reality to be a part of the staff there and help implement, watch, and observe the process of people making transitions, people coming in from just having died, and what do they go through? What is the process? So it's not that my job was an essential part of that process. My job, I tell people, sort of like a Walmart greeter. I was there around, and yes, I could facilitate this or facilitate that, but the main point of it was my own education. It was for me seeing for myself how that worked and being a part of it to the point that it wasn't theory, it was just firsthand experience of how those sorts of things worked. And the system gave me that job because it thought that I needed to know how that process worked. So that's why they gave me the job. And the question is, will you have a job later, sort of like the job you have now? No, not anything at all like the job you have now. First of all, nobody's going to pay you. Your payment is your own education. It's not that kind of a thing. You're not going to be, well, I shouldn't say any more about it because actually a lot of it is like a job. When I had that job at the transition reality, and I've had others, it's like you do show up like every night. You lie down, you fall asleep, and bang, there you are. Or you lie down, you start to go out of body, and there you are. And it's like you can't get away from it. It's sort of like a dream that you can't let go of. Sometimes you get a dream and you get up and you go to the bathroom and you clear your head and say, I don't want to get back into that dream anymore. That wasn't fun. You lie down and bang, you're right back in that dream again. It's like that. It's a situation that just comes to you that you can't let go of, that you keep going there and keep going there until you have learned everything you need to learn from that situation, and it stops. And they do put you to work in the sense that you have things to do while you're there. You're going to greet people. You're going to observe. A lot of it's observation, but where you can help, you'll get put in as a helper doing things. But it's like maybe a better idea or a better metaphor would be you're an intern. So that's the kind of job you get. But other than that, no, you don't get any job at all. So basically the job is part of your education. Your job is to keep going through experience packets and grow up. That's your primary job, is growing up. And if these little side jobs are educational and help you grow up, then you'll get those things. If what you need is to learn special facts about such and such, then maybe you'll get a little job doing that, to learn those. But otherwise, if what you need is just to get back in the game and have another experience packet, then that's what you'll get. So I'd say getting a job is probably off in the margin someplace. It's not like that's what happens to everybody. Everybody maybe will get jobs now and again, but it's not like everybody gets their, the minute they they die, they get into an employment situation where now they have work to do. It's not like that. For the most part, your job is to reincarnate and grow up.
Right. So those are actual processes, because I'm trying to compare it to, say, something like the programs such as Lifeline, or such as things that you had recommended, that you can rescue stuck souls. Those are learning situations.
They are
Or
learning.
can they also be real processes?
Well, they're all real processes.
Okay.
Information is real. They're all real processes. There's no way to tell the difference. You see, it's all experience. This is a virtual reality. Is this real experience we're having? Are we real having this conversation, Donna? Are we real people sitting here having this conversation? You see, it gets to the point that that's not the right question. That's silly. Of course, we're real. We're having this conversation, and this conversation is going to go out, and other people will hear the conversation, and it's going to be real for them too. But if they never listen to this, it's not going to be real for them. So the people who never, click on play, it's not going to be a real part of their experience. The people who play and watch it, well, now watching this video will be a part of their experience, you see? So, and then it'll be real for them. Information is real. And I know it's hard to get the arms around that sort of concept, but yes, when you go to Lifelines, which is a soul retrieval process, it's like another virtual reality. And in that virtual reality, you do things and interact and make choices. And by those choices, you grow up or grow down, just like making choices here. There's no difference. In the dream reality, you make choices. And by those choices, you evolve or de-evolve. And you say, yeah, but here's real. And the dream reality isn't real. And the Lifelines isn't real. But this physical reality is real. What's the difference between those three? Nothing. They're all virtual realities. You're all, in all of those, you're getting a data stream. In all of those, you're making choices, and in all of those, you're evolving or de-evolving based on those choices. Information is as real as it gets. So when I go work at the transition reality, is that the really real transition reality, or is that another virtual reality of the transition reality? There's no way to tell. There's no difference. Information is information. You just report it the way you experience it. I report my experience. If you try to look at what's happened behind the scenes of the experience, well, mostly you can't tell that. You're just getting data. You can't tell where that data comes from. So it doesn't matter. Eventually you say, well, that's the wrong question, asking, well, where does that data come from? Is that real data or is that not real data? The data is all created by the larger consciousness system. It's all equally real. So I could say that I was in a virtual reality where this virtual reality was called transition. And I was playing the virtual reality game. And while I was there, I saw people coming in from the transition process, and I was a part of that process. That's no different than saying it any other way. It's information. You interact with it. There's nothing more real. There's nothing less real about the information you get.
So what is valuable really is how you interact with it, because some people, when we were speaking about this Lifeline, were disappointed that they weren't actually helping someone who was stuck in the transition go into the light, as they might put it. They interpreted it as an exercise that wasn't an actual being they were helping. But people are stuck in kind of describing what they're doing as though they are in a physical reality, when in fact, as you say, reality is information,
right,
and it's learning.
It's simply prejudice. People feel that this virtual reality that they're in, that they call the physical universe, that this is the real reality, and everything else is kind of a fake reality, right? Your dreams are kind of a fake reality. That's not a real reality. Our reality is the real reality. And there's nothing more than prejudice. The dream reality is just as real a reality as this reality. It's just a different virtual reality. So you are a player of virtual realities. You play this one called physical universe, and you play an avatar. And now you play a different one, and you're Soul Retrieval. You play a different one, you're Transition Helper. You play a different one, you're Dreamer. So you're playing, you're getting all these different data streams. Each data stream defines a reality. You're interacting with the data. In all of the above, you can grow up. So any reality that you can evolve in, grow up, make choices, and evolve from because of the choices you make, that's what makes a reality important. That the choices you make are important. You see, that's what makes it a valid, interesting, valuable experience. You're making choices. Okay. Now, the fact that you do it in virtual reality, this physical universe, virtual reality dream, virtual reality transition, virtual reality soul retrieval is irrelevant. What's important is that you're making choices, and by those choices, you're growing up. So in any of those realities, if you say, oh, this is just a virtual reality, so it doesn't matter what I do because it's a virtual reality, so I can just go out and kill 100 people and say, well, it doesn't matter. They're just virtual people. It isn't real, sort of like playing some, what virtual reality game, I can't think of it, but there's some ugly ones where you go around killing people, so it's just like that. It doesn't matter. It's all a virtual reality. No, it does matter. Every choice you make helps you evolve or de-evolve the quality of your consciousness. It's important. And you go around killing 100 people. Well, in this reality, it's a multiplayer game. In a multiplayer game, you affect other people. The things I do in a multiplayer game affect others. That's true when you play The Sims. The choices you make in The Sims affects other players in The Sims. The choice you make in World of Warcraft affects other players. Players can group together to cooperate, to do certain things, or they can fight with each other or whatever, but they affect each other. So when you affect each other, now that's a little different. In a multiplayer game, now you also have to take into consideration not just what you might learn, but how you interact with other people, what you're doing for system entropy, not just self-entropy. So going out and killing 100 people is not like doing that in a game where you're the only player and everything else is not a player, it's an NPC. Okay, here we have lots of players and you have to take them into consideration, and that's part of the choices you get to make. You get to make choices of not being self-centered and caring about other people. You see, so that's a different kind of a reality. You go into Soul Retrieval, and now, it's like a single player game. You're in there, things happen, you make choices. It's not so much that your choices are affecting other players in the game. I guess that's possible. You could maybe have a multiplayer, Soul Retrieval game, but mostly they're not. Mostly they're just single player games. It's you and those souls you're working on. It's a single player game. So that's a little different. In a single player game.
Those souls aren't beings, because I think the thing that was upsetting with one particular person in Soul Retrieval was that they understand that we're connected. They understand that we affect other beings, and that the thought of it just being exercised for themselves was not as they would have expected to help another person. Yeah. They would like to have actually affected another being and helped them.
Right.
But that isn't the case.
They were in a single player game playing with the computer. Okay, all those characters, let's say to make a statement, we'll say that all the souls in the Soul Retrieval game were all NPCs. Okay. So it's playing that sort of a game. Now, if it takes the game very seriously and really does the best they can to help, to win this game. By winning this game, you help souls go on in their process. Well, if you really play it seriously, then you can really evolve the quality of your consciousness doing it. If you don't take it seriously and say, oh, they're just NPCs, it doesn't make any difference, why bother? Well, now you don't develop. You see, you got nothing, you're at zero. So you can either develop the quality of your consciousness, or you can sit in a corner and suck your thumb. Those are your choices. So you get out and do things. And all the tools you have for developing the quality of your consciousness ought to be taken very seriously. And just because it's a single player game and not a multiplayer game doesn't mean that it isn't significant, it isn't important, or it's not going to help you grow up. It's just a bad attitude or a dysfunctional attitude in that, oh, it's not a multiplayer game, they're just NPCs, so it doesn't matter. That's not helpful. That's dysfunctional.
I don't think they think it doesn't matter. I think they wonder, if that isn't the process, what is the actual process?
Well, the actual process doesn't have a whole lot of people that get stuck. The system isn't that bad. The system's a very efficient system, and people don't get stuck. It's very, very, very unusual for anybody to get stuck. The system is that when you die, your past life and all of your experiences go away like a dream, and there you are. Not in Kansas anymore. You're in some other reality. And then you start interacting with that other reality. So it's not a hard thing. It's like the system is made for that to be simple and easy to work. So your difficult processes are way out in the margins. Yes, some processes are harder than others. Some take a lot more processing than others. But in general, it's very, very unusual for anybody to get stuck. Okay. The only stuck is if somebody is so totally and completely obsessed that you can't get through that obsession. In other words, your mind creates your own reality. If you're totally obsessed with something, it's hard to let go. You don't let go. The dream doesn't fade. You're just obsessed with it and obsessed with it. So there's a few of those, but not many. Most people are not that obsessed. Even if we look at them here in this reality and say, wow, that person's really obsessed with something or other, it's not really like that. When they die, it fades and they go on. I mean, we're talking about an extremely unusual obsession with something. Then there's a little bit of some stickiness there, but the system deals with that. And they deal with it very quickly, and it doesn't last very long, and it's a very short thing. They don't need people to go fix that. The system can fix it itself very easily. So
that explains it very well.
Yeah, so that's what's going on, is the system doesn't need that, but it offers that. Actually, it offers almost anything you can think of as a help for people to grow up. So there's lots of these little single player games. The whole out-of-body experience is mostly just a single player game. The lucid dreaming experience is basically a single player game. All experience is our receiving a data stream and interpreting it. And we interpret it based on our past choices, our past thoughts. We have an experience base, our past, our knowledge, our fear, our ego, our beliefs. That's how we interpret the information. So we get this information, we interpret it, and then that gives us an experience of some sort. We're consciousness. Our experiences come from interpreting and interacting with data. We get information, we pass it back. Multiplayer games, other people are involved. That's even more educational because, like I say, you have to be considerate of other people. Other players are in the game. So you need to not just be me and my souls that I'm retrieving. Well, that's a single player game. Or me and my out-of-body experiences. That's a single player game. But now it's me and a whole lot of other players are all in this together. So let's cooperate and care. And we can do so much better in this game if we do that, you see. So it's another level up of difficulty when you go into a multiplayer game. But it's not like these other games are all useless and aren't important. They're not significant. They're all very significant tools that we can use. But you can't go into it with the idea this is just a single player virtual reality game and it doesn't really matter anyway, because it does matter anyway. The choices you make will help you evolve or de-evolve. So if you either don't go into it, which means you lose the opportunity to use it as a tool to grow up, or if you go into it with the idea that you'll just, not play the game right. You'll find that lost soul and you'll make fun of it and slap it around and, turn it into a frog, and then you'll leave and go, ha, ha, ha. If you want to do that, then you're going to de-evolve from that. So take it seriously. It is serious. It's important. All experience is pretty much the same. If it's a single player game, then you don't have to worry about other people so much. If it's a multiplayer game, then you have not only the game, but you have the other players to consider. So it's just a little different, but it's not like one's real and the other's fake. I mean, there's differences between them, but they're all just information that we get, and then we get to interact with it. So they're all equally real. They're all equally real. None of them, it's not like this one is more real than the others. This one's just a multiplayer game. And you can get in some non-physical games that are also multiplayer, that are besides ours. There's other multiplayer games out there, and you may get involved with them, and they may be all in NPMR, and you may be dealing with other players in some setup. That can happen. And for the most part, you won't know the difference between an NPC and another player, right? There's no way to tell. Again, the data doesn't come with tags on it. This data is from an NPC. This data is from another player. You don't get that. So you have to always be skeptical, but you have to play it for all it's worth. You have to get as much out of it as possible. So let's say you're playing a game with NPCs, but you're cooperating with them. You're treating them as other players. And you and these NPCs are cooperating with each other and interacting with each other, and you're being helpful to them and they're being helpful to you. Oh, well, now you're going to grow up even more for that, you see? So why wouldn't you look at it that way? You could look at it, oh, they're just NPCs, but how do you tell the difference between an NPC and a player? You can't. There's no difference. Even in The Sims or the World of Warcraft, what's the difference between a player and an NPC? Well, they could make the graphics such that you couldn't tell. There is no difference between. In at least the World of Warcraft, they make it clear. The NPCs, maybe the monster in the cave, or it's somebody in a particular house that will give you a quest, and they're kind of different. They don't act and feel like characters, but they could make them so they act and felt like characters. So you never really know what you're doing or why you're doing it. But we still have to describe it when somebody asks, well, what was that experience all about? Or what was the significance of that experience? So you use words like, well, I had a job in the transition reality and I did this and this and that because that was my experience. Everything else is possible, but you don't know any more than that. So you just say it's your experience because it was. You can't say where the data came from. Oh, all of those characters I played with were all NPCs. All those characters I came with were other players. No way to tell. No way to tell. So you play it like it's all a game called consciousness evolution. Play it for all it's worth. Learn as much as you can, which means play it like they're all other players. And you have to be polite and courteous to all of them. There's extra points for being polite. There's extra points for cooperation, even if they're all just NPCs, you see? So you can learn to cooperate with a bunch of NPCs and you'll get extra points. You'll grow up a little because you cooperated rather than just were self-centered. So you see, so you start with the assumption that everything is just as it seems. They're all players. It's all real. It all just is as it is. And you have experiences and you grow from that. And everything else is just possibility. Everything else is just possibility. So you don't stumble over the, oh, but I thought it was real. You see, that's just the wrong attitude. It is real. Yes, cooperate with those NPCs if that's what they are, but you'll never know. Nobody will know for sure whether an NPC is an NPC or a character. Now, we can look at certain kinds of characters, like, I've explained NPCs, somebody shows up, pulls Timmy out of the well, who was that guy? Nobody ever heard of him or saw him again, So you can look at that and you can say, well, that sounds like it might have been an NPC, but do we know for sure? No, you never know for sure. So you see that those things happen. Throughout history, there's always these things that just show up and the person just gives somebody the right information at the right time. And, so we look at all that and we might say, yeah, those all could have been NPCs. But do we know for sure? No. Will we ever know for sure? Never. You see, so you have to learn to live gracefully with uncertainty. That's part of that idea. So our world is just information and we interact with it. And depending on how we interact with it, we grow up. So if we really are very cooperative and caring with the NPCs, we grow up more than if we're not, than if we assume they're just NPCs. You see? So it's all of this is attitude, and it's all mostly prejudice about this being real and other things aren't. Let all that go. Doesn't matter. Is this real is the wrong question. Were those real souls needing to be retrieved? Wrong question. The question is, how did you interact with them? What did you do? That's important. That's the question, you see, that's important. That means you evolved or de-evolved. Trying to say, well, were they real or were they not real? Or was it a single player game, a multiplayer game? Irrelevant. Doesn't matter because you'll never know for sure.
It's information. So if you're coming from the reality equals information, information is there for learning, and then from learning, there's growth. It's very easy to understand that way.
Right. So this question of worrying about whether they were actually real souls in distress or just pretend souls in distress in a single player game is not a good question. It's not a good thing to try to find an answer to, because one, I put my finger up over here. Of course, nobody can see that. I'm going to move it over here. One, it's impossible to tell. Two, even if you could tell, it doesn't matter at all because you put your all into it. You do the best you can. You connect, you help, you cooperate, you care. And that's what's important. It's what you've done to it. It's what's important. You see, so those are the wrong questions. It's the wrong attitude. Are these just single player game and those are just NPCs? NPC or not an NPC? Doesn't make any difference. Really doesn't make any difference. You should bring yourself to it wholly and fully and engage in it and do everything you can to succeed and to help those poor little souls get to wherever they're going. You need to care. It needs to be something from your heart. You need to connect to it. If not, then you're not growing as much as you could grow with it. If you go in with a very self-centered attitude, well, it's just about me and a bunch of NPCs, then that's the wrong attitude. So it doesn't matter whether they're NPCs or not. That's my point. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. What matters is it's all experience.
Yeah, I can see how it is the experience and it is for your growth. I can see how that
So if you don't experience and you don't grow and you don't do and you don't care and you don't love because, oh, they're just NPCs, you've just wasted a lot of your time. You're decided, I don't want to play in this sandbox. So you're going to go not do that. Well, now you've lost an opportunity to grow up. And if you say, well, they're just NPCs, so I don't really have to care about them individually because they're just characters played with a computer. well, you've lost an opportunity to grow up. Those are all assumptions that you're making, which may or may not be true. So it doesn't matter is the idea. Now, as I explain these things in my explanations, I'm trying to explain them in as simple a way as possible. What's the simplest explanation? And that's what you get from me from an explanation. So you talk about the saving souls game, and I say, well, if you want to think about that, think about it as a single player game. All right, because it's you and the problem. That's generally a single player game. It's you and the problem. You're not interacting a lot with other players. It's not like you and 5 other players are trying to help this little soul, whatever. It's 1-to-1 mostly. It's how that works, right? And you've been in those things. It's usually a 1-to-1 thing. It's not a group on one, but it's a 1-to-1 thing. Well, that looks like a single player game. So that's how I describe it. But live gracefully with uncertainty. We really don't know. And I can't describe everything as we don't know for sure. If you said, well, what's this? Well, we don't know for sure. What's that? Well, we don't know for sure. And how does this work? Well, we don't know for sure. That doesn't help anybody, you see. Now, that may be actually more accurate to say that, but it's totally useless to help anybody else see a bigger picture to just say, well, we don't know for sure, because we don't get tabs on the data that tell us where the data is coming from. Is this data from the LCS? Is this coming from some other IUOC? Or is this coming out of our imagination? We don't know. They're all mixed in there together. So because we don't get that tagged for us, we're never sure of any of the data we get, of where it comes from. There's no way you can tell. But to just say, I don't know, there's no way to tell, to every question anybody asks you, well, you might as well just not say anything. You're not being helpful to anyone. So I make my descriptions as accurate as I can in the simplest way possible. And I tell everybody over and over, don't believe a word I tell you. You have to learn from your own experience. I'm not telling people things that, and here's the truth, and you need to believe it. It's not like that. I give them a model, and I say, here's the model will help you understand the nature of reality and see a bigger picture. And from this model, you can do a lot of amazing things like derive physics and understand philosophy and understand theology. And it gives you a lot of benefits to understanding things, but take with it whatever you can. And where it doesn't fit you well, throw it away. It's a model for you to use, but it's not a model for you to believe. So you see, people don't have a hard time getting their arms around that, though. It's really hard for them to do it. They want to know, well, are you telling me the truth, and should I believe it?
Yours is an experience model. Yours is not
Yes.
this is how it is model. So unless you're going to go experience this kind of consciousness exploration, you won't understand that.
Exactly.
You don't need a set of, oh, here's how it is. Oh, okay, I see that now. I believe that now. You have to use your dreams and your exploration and consciousness as learning. They're all, as you say, valid virtual realities from which you learn, including this one.
Absolutely.
Not any different.
Absolutely.
Right,
this is an experiential model. Everybody learns from their own experience. What I write about and what I say comes out of my own experience. My experience is not your experience. You have to learn from your own experience. Remember, if it's not your experience, it's not your truth. I keep reminding people of this, but they keep forgetting it. Just as fast as I remind them, they forget it. And they think I'm talking about the truth and that they should believe the truth that I tell them.
Yeah.
And it's not like that. This is my experience. Go have your own experience. Find your own truth. But I feel certain that as you go find your own truth, you will find that if you're successful, it will lead to an understanding that love is the answer.
Yeah.
That we're here to cooperate. We're here to care, that this is about consciousness evolution. So there's a few things like that. Now, these are metaphors of mine, but you'll turn into maybe your own metaphors. You may create different metaphors. As much as we can find a model that we all kind of like and we can all use the metaphors, then it makes it easier for us to talk to each other, because instead of talking past each other, we'll be using the same language and the same metaphor. So that maybe is handy, but it has to be a representative of your own experience, your own truth. It can't be my truth. It has to be your own truth. So I think this has been a good one, Donna, and we
Yes.
should probably pull this out and put it up on its own little YouTube video, because a lot of people get hung up on this, what's real and what's not, and what's fake, and is soul retrieval really a real thing? Oh, it's a single player game. It's not real. I was just saving NPCs that weren't really in trouble. Well, that's not the point. The point is to be all you can be, to help all you can help, to care all you can care, to love. That's the point. And
I think it is a good one. I expanded a little bit from what other people have commented on to try to make it general and to try to add a little bit to it. But I expanded a little bit on his concept of what jobs there are in NPMR. But I will isolate this one out of the whole. I'll leave this in, but I'll isolate it also out of the whole, because I think it is clarifying a lot. It's quite good.
Yeah, just because they're NPCs doesn't mean the game isn't important, and doesn't mean that you shouldn't go into it with your heart and with your love. That's how you should play it. That's how you should play everything, because in the end, you don't know whether it's NPCs or not. Nobody will know for sure, because nobody gets the data tagged. So we can say, well, it's probably NPCs because it has all the characteristics of a single player game, but nobody knows for sure about anything that has to do with the source of the data. The source of the data is always unknown, has to be unknown.
You never know who you're interacting with. It could be the LCS, could be another being, or
Could be other
an
players.
NPC.
Sure.
But you don't want to lose that opportunity.
No. Well, why should you? That's the whole point of it. That's the whole point of it being there, is for you to use it as a tool for growing up. And you should interact with all things with all the love that you can bring to bear on them. It's not like, well, these things I need to be loving, and then these other things I don't have to be. You know, I can just put my trusty gun and shoot somebody over here. But over here, I need to be loving. No, you really need to be loving in all your aspects and all your interactions with people. That's the way it is in the real world. Now, if you're 15 years old and you're playing some kind of little shoot 'em up game, you know, in virtual reality, well, that's a different thing. Now you are very much not in that reality. It's just a game. Otherwise, you wouldn't or shouldn't play it. If the point of the game is to see how many people you can kill, you know, if that's something you go into wholeheartedly from the heart, well, that's a very bad thing. If you go into it, it's just a silly game, you know, it's like whatever, you know, it's not real. Then you can play the game without it turning you into a monster. You can play the game and it's just something you play, and it doesn't really hurt you. You don't de-evolve because you play an ugly game. Now it's just the game. But let's say you're not 15 years old, you're an adult, and you're not just playing silly games, you're dealing with life and life experiences and soul retrieval and, you know, your dreams and everything that goes on in the physical universe, all the interactions with all the people at work and the people at school and everything. You should approach all of that with love and with caring, and not jump to conclusions about how important it is. Not vet it. Well, what's the source? How important is it? How important are those people? Are they rich people? Oh, well, then they're important. Are they really poor people? Oh, they're not very important. I mean, how many times has our culture run into that, where the poor people were not important people? The poor people, you could just run over them or shoot them or do what you wanted to them, and that was okay. But the wealthy people were important because they had power, and you don't want to mess with power because power pushes back. So all of that is very dysfunctional. Trying to decide what people can we run over and what people should we suck up to. That's not about love at all. That's all self-centered. So you should start with love with everything. Yeah, if you're playing a little shoot 'em up single player game, well, that's an exception, but that's not real life. Everything else is real life. Dreaming is real life.
Yeah.
Out of body is real life. The Soul Retrieval games, that's real life. So that's the way it should be approached. I and MBT Events hope you liked this video. We will continue to post videos for free on my YouTube channel, but please understand, these videos are expensive to produce. They represent many thousands of hours of production and editing, as well as all the necessary audiovisual equipment, computers, and software. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. It would be very much appreciated. The links are in the description below. Thank you.